been 50 years since a human has landed on the moon. Why is it so important to do it again now?
Well, that's a wonderful question. If I had my way, we would have kept doing it. But actually, I think partly, I'll tell you something, that partly the intent at the time of Apollo was to show that it could be done. And it was very primitive technology. There is more memory by far in the average phone today than there was in the computer that took us to Mars. Actually, its total memory was only 32 kilobytes. And I write emails all the time that have more content than that. So it was a huge challenge. But one of the things that we did was we focused on what the president said, which is to get people manned safely to the moon and return him safely back to Earth. And so in a lot of ways, it was a lot like a camping trip. We packed everything, we picked up as many rocks as we could possibly carry because they were so valuable scientifically. And then we came home. And as a result, it just wasn't clear what we were going to do next. So where we are now, I look at this, I kind of take a step back and say, with the space shuttle, we learned a lot about humans in space and how to do science in space. But we only flew the shuttle 6 or 7 times a year for about 10 days to 2 weeks at a time. And so we made the next giant leap, which was to live in space 24/7, 365 days a year, so we could do a lot more science. And those things were really important. Along the way, we learned about life support systems, how people live in space, how it affects their bodies, how to effectively train people to go into an environment that is very different. It's nothing like being here in gravity on the surface of the Earth. So we've learned all those things, and we are ready to take the sum of that learning and actually go figure out what is the blueprint for how we are going to, as humans, live permanently in space and explore it throughout the solar system and maybe even beyond. And so a key aspect of the Artemis program is not just going and coming home. Absolutely have to prove that first, right? That's the bare minimum. You can't do anything exciting if you don't have the way to get there and stay alive and come home. But what we are talking about now is, how are we going to do science, habitation, extracting resources like water that has been found in lunar soil? Because if we can extract those things, we don't have to carry them all the way from Earth. And water is kind of magical. Not only does it keep humans alive and it supports cooling systems and other things we need for science, it's rocket fuel. So if we don't have to carry all our rocket fuel, that would be really amazing. So we're going to go a lot further than Apollo did. We are going to try to figure out how we're going to sustain a presence and live there. So it's more like the Mayflower.
Wow, that's amazing. I never thought of it that way. That's really cool. What has been the most challenging part about planning this mission?
Oh, wow. Most challenging part of planning this mission. I think I would say we have some experience with this. We built the space station with the space shuttle, and a few of the elements were launched by our partners in Russia. But in general, we knew exactly what we were working with. We had a shuttle that we really understood. We were just putting pieces of it in a payload bay, lifting it up, using the spacewalkers that we understood, the robotic arm of the space shuttle and the space station to assemble it. And now we have a much more complicated system. Not, we've got a big rocket that's going to carry people in a capsule called Orion. We have the Gateway, which is not up yet. It won't support the first Artemis mission, but it will later missions. And that will be a logistics cache. So just like I said, if we're going to send people permanently, People take a lot of food and supplies, and so does our science. We need to have a place to stockpile it. And then when the crew gets there, we can take just what we need down. So and then we need a human lander system to get from lunar orbit down to the surface and then back up. So if you think about it, we're like interfacing 4 different types of spacecraft all together: a rocket, a capsule, an orbiting logistics post, and something that gets us up and down. So we won't be showing the human lander or gateway on our very first flight. So we're just building pieces up, but everything has to come together on the schedule. So there's a lot of complicated technology in each piece, but I think the truth is this is just really the most complicated system we've ever attempted. And that's because we're trying to stay instead of just go and visit.
Wow, that is really cool. I never thought we were gonna ever try and stay on the moon. I just always thought of it as like a future concept, as something authors would write in books
Well,
as
I promise you, it's going to take us a few years. We're going to have to practice landings, and we're not talking about building a permanent habitation like a pup tent on the moon. Not yet. It's going to be probably late 20s. But I think by the end of this decade, you're going to be absolutely seeing people stay on the moon for long periods of time.
wow, that is amazing.
I think so too.
NASA has committed to sending the first woman and the first person of color to the moon in 2024. Why is this important to NASA?
Oh, this is incredibly important. You know, NASA is the American Space Agency, and our astronauts are the face of America. And you know, it was very inspiring for me to be an astronaut, to realize that I was taking up a little bit of every human being I ever met or talked to into space with me. And I think it's just important to understand we have not had all the opportunities for women and people of color, and not provided enough encouragement and support. STEM education subjects are hard. I had to work very, very hard in school. And so we really need to show people that that's possible. And sometimes if they don't see someone who looks like them, they think that the program is not for them. And I will tell you a funny story about that. One of my closest friends in the astronaut office, she was another woman astronaut, and she had a little boy. And like her 2 or 3 closest friends were all women astronauts. And one day when he was about 5 years old, he said, "Mommy, can boys be astronauts too?" So it just goes to show that, you know, you have to see it to really understand, or you know, connect yourself. And the great thing is that in this big wide country, we have so many smart people. And I'm excited. We just hired a new astronaut class, and they come from all over. And there are women, there are men, there are people of color. And they're all super duper smart. So, to me, I think that it will be helpful for everybody to see that space is for everyone.
That's great, and it's good to have role models for little kids so they can be inspired.
I think so. I really do. There was no one for me when I was your age. But, I'll tell you something. My mom was really smart, and so is my dad. And they basically told me I could do anything I wanted to. And so they stood in the place of a role model for me by encouraging me. So yeah, we can do better though.